Welcome back. Let me introduce our next guest who's going to join us in this conversation. And this morning, we do have Wycliffe Alutalala, who is an MCA aspirant, Kitsuru Ward, Westlands, running on an ANC party. Wycliffe, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Happy to see you. All right, now let's get that story. Now, the reporting and evaluation of President Uhuru Kenyatta's projects under the Big Four agenda are now taking the final shape after the head of public service, Joseph Kinyua, reorganized public communication and ordered ministries to make mandatory quarterly reports on the progress of government under the Big Four agenda. Now, the head of public service has now reorganized public reporting into one unit that shall comprise the Presidential Delivery Unit and the Kenya Vision 2030 Delivery Secretariat. In a circular dated August 24th, 2021, Mr. Kinyua stated that, and I quote, as part of the framework objective and to ensure efficiency and appropriate content, referencing all advertisements and public communications shall be edited, curated and compartmentalized under the appropriate Kenya Vision 2030 and Big Four agenda by the Vision 2030 Secretariat and the Presidential Delivery Unit for subsequent dissemination by the government spokesperson. And quote, Mr. Kinyua also indicated that all public institutions would be audited by teams from the presidency in a bid to evaluate the impact of billions of shillings spent each year on the president's Big Four agenda. In the current financial year, the Treasury has allocated 450.9 billion to fund the Big Four agenda programs and 50 billion increase from the previous fiscal year. All right, let's cross over to the data set that we have for you this morning on how the government has really allocated development expenditure. And you can see from there, it's not been on the way up. It looks as if we found ways to cut it back when need be. And that's exactly what we've seen across the board as well. Government expenditure has continued to rise. And as you can see from that area, is that indeed when it comes to borrowing, Uhuru Kenyatta's government has borrowed enough. That's what we're seeing, that trend going up. Same thing we're going to say in terms of Kenya's public debt going up. Again, external debt as well going up as well. That is just a nutshell on exactly how President Uhuru Kenyatta has been trying to spend on the Big Four agenda. Now, 1 year to go, one budget cycle to go. They want to see, have they done it? Let me start with Wycliffe in the studio this morning. When you look at this man, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, he came in on the promise of delivering on the Big Four agenda. He said it's going to be development. Has he done it? How can you evaluate his tenure?
Okay, thank you first of all for having me in studio. Now, straight to the point, when President Uhuru Kenyatta was elected for his second term in 2017, his main agenda was the Big Four agenda. Indeed, the Big Four agenda was a big idea, and it was a wonderful idea. However, with less than 11 months left to the next general election, personally, I believe the Big Four agenda has not been done even halfway.
Yes.
Looking at the main, what was to constitute the Big Four agenda, for example, if we are to talk about housing, the Big Four agenda had envisioned that in the next 5 years, we will be having 500,000 units of housing to help Kenyans own houses at a cheaper rate. Looking at what is on the ground to date, I'm not sure we've done 100,000 units.
Yes.
So I don't believe in the next 1 year we'll be able to put up the remaining 400,000 units. Now, look at something like healthcare. Health was the second agenda among the Big Four. The president or the Jubilee government talked about universal health care, whereby within 5 years, every Kenyan was supposed to access free medical health, courtesy of government.
Yes.
To date, as we speak, in the midst of corona, we have seen NHIF not being able to pay for corona cases, leave alone the universal health care. The current NHIF that was in place even when the president was coming in,
yes,
is not able to cater for NHIF, for corona cases. And we've seen a lot of fundraisings across the country of people who have been affected by corona, who have not been able to pay their bills. So on universal health care, to date, I'm not sure, from the time I saw it being launched in Kisumu,
yes,
I'm not pretty sure that even half of Kenyans to date are able to access that facility.
Yes.
So in my own thinking, the Big Four agenda, if you are to rate it, is like 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
Yeah.
All right. Wycliffe, let me jump. I'm coming back to you so that now Uhuru Kenyatta has been accused of being more of a political-oriented man as opposed to being more of an issue-based man throughout his tenure. That's why even some members of the economy have said, well, you are focusing so much on what is going on the political front as opposed to focusing on what's going on the development agenda. Let me cross over to Collins before I come back to Wycliffe in the studio. Collins, how would you rate Uhuru Kenyatta's performance? And it's 1 year to the end of his tenure. Can he achieve what he promised under the Big Four agenda?
I rate his performance 3 over 10, and he cannot achieve anything because he has been president from 2013.
Yes.
2013 to 2017, he did not achieve anything for
Yes.
4 years.
Yes.
Using that logic, then he cannot achieve anything for 1 year. He promised, we started with computers, laptops, we went to Stadias, after that we went to electronic SGR, all the way to all these things. But if I'm going to give him credit for one thing, I'm going to give him credit for infrastructure.
Yes.
That is the roads that we keep seeing and the roads that they keep talking about. You know, every time you see the regime talking, they keep saying how when they assumed office, now they've tarmacked 140 something kilometers. You wonder where this country into a crisis, and they really the next government get in place next year. The kind of predicament we are inside, we are not going to get out of it.
Yes.
By magic. Like we are still going to be part of this for so long. For instance, if you're going to talk about our debt, if you're going to talk about the public, the wage bill that we have, those are issues that we're going to have so long. But look at the big that you've asked, and for instance, the universal healthcare coverage. The other day we were discussing the amendment of the NHIF bill that I can state that is going to fail because of the kind of rhetoric that is coming from members of parliament.
Yes.
And that was just one of the things that were geared towards seeing that we implement universal health coverage. But even COVID pandemic has really exposed us as a country. You've seen how a lot of county governments do not have ICU beds. You've seen that, for instance, now the Ministry of Health will tell you that there are no beds in Nairobi at all, and yet it's still talking about universal health coverage.
Yes.
We've had State House, the First Lady running a marathon to rescue maternal health care, which last year it was not there. It was hampered with corruption cases. We've had people from the president's family being implicated in corruption cases. The Ministry of Health. So I don't think there's anything we're going to remember this president apart from trendy fashion and report corruption and doing nothing. He could back, but he could not bite.
All right, Rufus, let me also bring you in. I mean, from the front of, he had an idea. It's now that we're talking about Vision 2030, and the Big Four was actually towards the realization of the Vision 2030. What has been the biggest challenge for him, Rufus?
Our big challenge right now is policy.
Yes.
So if you compare the past means, you miss a shift in terms of policy. So the Kenyan government trying to grow the economy through the 4 pillars, the Big Four agenda, You notice that it's trying to influence the economy directly rather than supporting the people.
Yes.
So the government cannot employ everyone. In terms of creating jobs, you have to incentivize growth so that when these companies and businesses growing, then the businesses create the employment. At the same time, when it comes to housing, the government cannot construct houses for everyone or for a big part of the population. So in terms of helping people own homes, I believe the policy should be leaning more towards supporting people get their own homes. If you create an environment where there is low mortgages or low cost mortgages, then people will be incentivized to go for them. If people have jobs, they will be able to afford homes. So it's more or less about creating the necessary environment that brings these results. So if you look at healthcare, we know we have a very nice platform with NHIF, though there is a lot of challenges here and there, especially with the distribution of funds. If you look at the business sector, which forms more than half of the contributors to the NHIF, they don't get as much cover as the civil servants and also the guys in parliament. So we need to create that kind of balance where if we have a package where everyone is contributing, then at least the rewards from such a program are distributed equally. So in terms of facilitating healthcare, it's more or less of empowering the people so that when people have money, then they contribute. If we don't do this, then you're going to fall into the challenges that you're having right now.
Yes.
If you look at the NHIF right now, they are currently complaining that people are signing up for the NHIF program. They pay for a couple of months, and once they get covered for a certain, let's say, disease or illness, then they pull off the program and stop contributing. And the main reason is the economy is really weak, people don't have money, they're trying to do everything they can to survive. And this has been one of the affected sectors. So at the same time, if you look at manufacturing, in the current case of TUI, they are doing well because the government have incentivized and helped people create new value chains. So if you can bring in the technology in manufacturing, help people or bring in the machinery required to do manufacturing, then it will be easy for people to take advantage of these. So rather than helping the people directly, the government should be trying to incentivize, lower the energy costs, lower the cost of borrowing, and hopefully we are going to have some positive results.
Pretty much. Let me come back to Wycliffe in the studio this morning. Wycliffe, that has been more of a politician as opposed to somebody who's focused on development. Now, towards the last few months of his tenure, or the last few years to his tenure, he's trying to gallop so much just to look as if he's achieved a couple of things here and there. Is that his fault, or we're looking at him differently?
Now, you know, as the saying goes, the leadership is a reflection of us.
Yes.
You will realize that most Kenyans, we are more into politicking than real issues. We are more into electing people based on euphoria than on facts. When this government came in, I remember their slogan in 2017 was digital versus analog. They were portraying themselves as young people who had the vision to carry this country to the next level against their competitors, who to them was perceived to be a bit older.
Yes.
But because Kenyans, we don't evaluate our leadership, we were carried off by that wave. Now, what happened is that I have heard my colleague talk about laptops. The laptops never came. The stadiums never came. All the fancy promises that were promised never came.
Yes.
So, it is true our government, and specifically the president, has been more of talking than doing. Now, when you talk about the Big Four agenda, for example, the issue of manufacturing.
Yes.
Why do we have a problem creating employment in this country? It is because we have adopted a system whereby we are more of a consuming nation than a producing nation. We are not giving investors a conducive environment to invest. Why? Number one, very high taxation. Kenya is in the list of those countries that are very highly taxed in the world.
Yes.
Number two, our cost of production is very high, specifically because of the cost of power. Today, if you bought tokens, electricity tokens, if you buy tokens worth 100 shillings, you will be given tokens worth 44 shillings, meaning 66 shillings go into taxation.
Yes.
Now, if you translate that into our manufacturing sector, you will realize that it is very uncompetitive for Kenyan industrialists to compete against other investors from outside. And no wonder you will realize that we are exporting almost 90% of what we consume in the country. And you will realize that in the past few years, several companies have closed shop in Kenya and went to our neighbors in Tanzania, in Rwanda, in Ethiopia, because the cost of production in this country is just too high. So to answer your question, it is true the president has been more of talking, more of politics than real work.
Yes.
And as my colleague said, he has been more of a barking dog, but never biting. You remember the recent scandal, KEMSA. I remember the president doing a statement and saying he is giving the investigative agencies 21 days to come up with a report. To date, we are 1 year old since the KEMSA scandal happened. We've not seen anyone in jail. We've not seen anyone in court. In fact, now what happened? The chairman to the KEMSA board was transferred and is now heading another parastatal as a chairman. So the main reason why even this Big Four agenda has failed,
yes,
is because of too much talking and no action.
Yes.
We saw the case of, it is called Kulalu Galana,
Kulalu, yes,
the irrigation project.
Yes.
Several billions were pumped into that project, ostensibly to help on the issue of food security. The Auditor General's report showed that almost 3/4 of the money that was pumped into that Kulalu Galana project went missing.
Yes.
To date, we've not seen anything done on that particular project. But we'll always see the president issue very hard statements, very strong statements, give ultimatums, but we don't see any action,
yes,
to show the seriousness of fighting this corruption and making sure that people are accountable. So I think Big Four agenda was a good idea,
yes,
but it has failed because of too much talk and less action.
Pretty much. I just want you to take 1 minute, Wycliffe, because I know you're aspiring to be an MCA under ANC party, Kitsuru Ward.
Yes.
Let's just 1 minute. If you look at what's going on in the country right now, because yes, we might look back and say, well, Uhuru Kenyatta has not delivered on the Big Four agenda. When you look at the political ongoings in the country right now, are they more of just politics or issue-based?
Now, you know, politics is a wide field.
Yes.
And when you talk about politics, you talk about the candidates.
Yes.
Because it is the candidates doing the politics. And in my own assessment, in this country, we have politicians and we have leaders. And if you ask me why I chose to contest on ANC party,
yes,
is because I believe in its leadership. My party leader, who is Musalia Mudavadi, is a leader and not a politician. He's actually a manager. He's someone who is able to expound on what he thinks, and is someone who is able to say what is really ailing this country. And he has been consistent. From 2017, when we elected this government, even when the president was launching the BBI project, which has been thrown out by the courts, he said clearly, the problem in Kenya is economy, economy, economy. So this is someone who is not just doing politics for the sake of it, because the people who have been doing politics with Kenyans are the type of people who have been giving promises, very good promises, but at the end of the day, they are just meant to hoodwink the public,
yes,
but nothing is done out of it. So if you ask me, the current political scenario, we have the politicians and we have the leaders who are genuine about what they say and what they mean. That is my assessment.
Pretty much. All right, Collins, in 45 seconds, because that's the only time that we have left for this conversation this morning, somebody's going to ask you, how should then Uhuru Kenyatta approach the Big Four agenda and the electioneering period?
now and breathe and his retirement home. Otherwise, is that the next of leaders in Kenya, not political leaders.
Yes.
They are in the market, in the other sectors.
It's unfortunate that, Collins, I have to cut you short because your feed is breaking. Let me put the same question to Rufus this morning. Rufus, if you can get me, how should he then, in just 45 seconds, Uhuru Kenyatta approach the Big Four agenda in his last budget cycle? Should he give every other power to development expenditure?
I think he has a of responsibilities approaches the end of his term. So one of the responsibilities is to basically support the big suffering businesses and also the people of the economy who have lost their jobs. So one of the ways that he can do so is by activating the vaccination program. So this will really come in handy in supporting all the four sectors and not just the big four agenda, the entire economy. So we really need the vaccinations to be and at the same time need the COVID-19 response to especially the night curfew. If the night curfew is removed, the night business will reopen and we'll see more employment for the Kenyan people and a faster recovery. So I believe that's it.
Fantastic. All right, Wycliffe, same question as well. Just 30 seconds, are we clear? How should he approach the Big Four agenda then, and also the electioneering period? Are we writing him off?
You cannot write off a sitting president.
Yes.
He still has the powers, he's still in government, he's still the head of state, and he still has a chance to redeem himself. Going forward, now that BBI is no more,
yes,
I would want the president to concentrate on the Big Four. Because if you ask me, the reason why this Big Four agenda flopped is because for the last 3 years, the conversation in this country changed from the Big Four agenda to BBI. And it has consumed billions of shillings and it has consumed a lot of time. So now that BBI is no more, the president has a role. Number one, to ensure that all the projects that were meant to be part of the BBI,
yes,
or to be part of the Big Four, any corruption that has been mentioned in those cases should be dealt with. Number two, the next financial year, this financial year that is ending in June next year, these two remaining quarters, any money that is meant for those projects, he must ensure that money goes to the rightful place and is used in the rightful manner.
Yes.
Because that is the biggest problem. Every budget cycle you've seen, there is allocation, but we don't see the actual work on the ground. So I believe that now with this reorganization in terms of communication, because also the problem we have also had about this Big Four agenda has been dissemination of information to the public. People don't know what is happening and what is not happening. So sometimes people may misjudge when in the real sense there is something happening. So we just believe that he'll be now more focused on the Big Four agenda, and the communication now with these new readjustments will come more often so that people can now remember him for what he has done. And I'm praying, because it is actually very wrong for you to be elected for 2 terms and finish your term and have no legacy. I'm just praying that even if he may not be able to do any other thing, let him finish the Nairobi Expressway. We shall remember him for that, just the same way we remember Kibaki for Thika Superhighway.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's exactly the views of Wycliffe Alutalala, who is a political aspirant and Sipati Kitsuru Ward. We're also joined by Rufus Kamau and Collins Aloch this morning. I'd like to say thank you very much to all of you for making time to join us in this conversation. That's exactly what we have for you this morning. Good morning. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiag.
Thank you.